We pick up here on day 2 with Mrs. Conklin, her advanced 9th grade English class debating Romeo and Juliet, love or lust.
All right, so part of what we're talking about is the idea of this physical attraction being really the heart of Romeo and Juliet's relationship. We also brought up the point that that ties in some of the scientific research, some of what we might consider love at first sight and whether that's possible, right? Does the love side have anything they want to add to that? Or do we want to start a new point?
I mean, I think we pretty much cleared it up yesterday.
Okay. On that particular point with the physical. Okay. Is there any new point you want to bring? Amanda?
Like you said like he was, that like you didn't know him because he had killed Tybalt, but he didn't just like do it like out of like anger or anything. It was also Mercutio who was like, how could you not defend me after he was like, while he was like dying, like he's like killing me. So like you can kind of say like it wasn't all like Romeo, it was also like the influence of Mercutio saying like, you're weak, like how could you like not help me? I'm your best friend, like, and you're just letting me die, like what's the honor in that?
So the idea that Romeo also chooses Juliet over someone he's known longer. Is that kind of what your point is?
No, like my point is like it's not necessarily like Romeo's like not habit. Like I can't think of the word. Like it's not like really part of his character necessarily. It was more like the influence of Mercutio, because like Romeo's first thought after like he'd kill Mercutio was like not like let me go kill him. It was like let me go like comfort my friend like while he's like dying. So it's not like Romeo like is like that caring person. I mean, like he shows us that like throughout the play, and so to say like that he's really like someone who's like with anger and everything like isn't necessarily like the truth, because like throughout the play he shows us that like he's caring and like, he's persistent with that. It's really like Mercutio like yelling at him, like that really like pushes him to go after Tybalt.
Okay, so you're saying that Romeo demonstrates kind of a strong connection to his emotions.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the love he claims he feels for Juliet could be real. Danny?
Kind of supporting what Amanda said with him being like very caring. Like in the beginning, like you would have never thought like he would do all these things, like kill someone and like be banished, but like because you just see like this sad mopey guy like wondering like, oh, I'm never gonna get Rosaline, like it's never gonna happen. So you do see that he cares, and I think Juliet almost changes him in like in kind of a better way, because it kind of changes like who he is, like, and makes him like happier. I think that's important.
So the change in his emotional state, right? The
Yeah.
fact that she can kind of bring out of him who his friends claim he's meant to be.
Yeah.
Right? Kaylee?
I think that killing Tybalt was another like impulsive decision, because I know he's trying to avenge Mercutio, but he didn't think about like the repercussions of killing Tybalt because they're like Juliet related. So I think that like after he killed him, obviously he was banished, so that kind of just ruined their relationship.
All right, so that idea of Romeo's impulsivity is coming up again, right? Charlotte, did you have something you wanted to add? Your hand went up before.
No, I kind of like
Okay, that's fine. As soon as you think it, if your hand goes up, write it down really quickly. Connor?
With the point that Romeo is this caring guy, I would like to remind everyone that most of his decisions when it comes to his banishment and things that are happening between him and Juliet are rather selfish. Like when he's banished, he doesn't go, oh, what'll happen to Juliet? He says, I won't be near Juliet, so I'll kill myself. And when he gets the news that she's died, rather than grieving like a sane person, he decides, okay, I'm going to die. And like he's so in touch with his emotions, that kind of makes him really, really impulsive with gigantic mood swings, such as when Mercutio died, he just got angry and immediately went to kill Tybalt.
All right, how about over here on the love side? Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
So you guys keep bringing up impulsive, and I understand that you think Romeo's impulsive, but think about it. Tybalt killing Mercutio, that was impulsive. Juliet killing herself the moment she sees Romeo dead, that's impulsive. Her parents keep on her parents the second that Paris is the second that Juliet is changing. Capulet is oh, you should marry Paris now. They're all constantly changing, and that doesn't make them impulsive just because they're changing their minds. Just because they're making one or two decisions, you can't call them impulsive. You don't know how their brain is working because they're fictional characters. So you could technically say that most of the characters in this story are impulsive.
Yeah, another point with that is that parental influence plays a big factor in children's lives, and I think that a lot of the parents in the story, like Capulets and Montagues, neglect their children, which could be a reason for why they act out so much. And I have an article here that says that, for example, children are more prone to negative emotions or episodes of anger, are deeply affected by hostile and neglecting parents, often leading to even more behavioral problems.
So that's an interesting new point. I want to say that this is probably the first time, I'm very impressed, that someone has brought up parental influence. And the idea that Romeo and Juliet are not the only characters in the play who demonstrate impulsive behavior. And if the parents are demonstrating that behavior, then certainly we can't fault the children for demonstrating that behavior. Right? Very good points.
Okay. Back to dating point. Though everyone in the play is impulsive, they got married and fell in love in a couple of days. They skipped dating anything. They just skipped over and to get married. That is, even though everyone is impulsive and people are changing, that's 100% impulsive. You don't change your thoughts about Rosaline to Juliet in an hour. That'll take time to get over.
To go off kind of what Jack said, during the party, it is shown that Juliet's parents aren't really they don't seem that they're in love. So if what you're saying is true, that means that Juliet can't really show love, which means that Romeo and Juliet aren't really in love, and they're just in a lust situation.
Yeah, but that's not what parental influence is saying. Parental influence is neglecting children, which is causing them to act out.
But the children also live what they learn. So if you're around parents who don't show love, and if you're not exposed to a loving relationship, how are you gonna know how to identify that? They're just gonna think, oh, I'm actually getting some affection from this person. This must be what love is actually like. So they're gonna be okay, let me marry this person. They're not what my parents demonstrate. I must have found love.
But from parental influence, it's not their fault if their parents are forcing them into a relationship. Capulet does not give Juliet a chance when he makes her marry Paris. Right?
But remember earlier he said to Paris, woo her heart. So he was giving Paris the
opportunity. Yeah, but it's parental influence. He changes his mind. There's no factor that says that he doesn't change.
All right, I do want to, because I know with this topic, we've kind of introduced something I think that sparked something. I think it's really interesting. When the question of the parents came in, I mean, that just kind of opens up a new idea. And I think the two perspectives, can be argued very well. I do want to hear from Sophia. I know, Sophia, you have to contribute at least one more time, so I want to give you a chance to do that.
Okay. So Mackenzie said that they just went straight to getting married after, 2 or 3 days, and they didn't date or anything before that. But back then, they didn't date. They just, it was like all arranged marriages, and like, you guys just keep thinking it's like impulsive and like crazy that this would happen because you're so used to what it's like today that a 13-year-old would never get married in the back 3 days. And our parents wouldn't arrange a marriage.
It actually also shows how Capulet is impulsive because he's acting without forethought because he's making Juliet marry Paris.
But remember that he was saying that it's his way of cheering her up. I think it was in the text somewhere. He was thinking, because Tybalt just died, he's going to try and distract his daughter from the grief of losing her cousin, so he's going to push the wedding a lot closer so she can get over it.
But clearly he wasn't trying to cheer her up because she was clearly getting upset, and he was just saying, like, you're going to marry Paris, like, you have no other option.
I don't remember him exactly talking to her directly about marrying Paris. I think she only talked to her mother, so I don't think he necessarily knew that she was so against getting married at that age, so I don't think.
Yeah, she only made one offhand comment that it displeased her and that had been chastised by her father on it, so she wouldn't mention it again, but her main talks about it were primarily with the nurse and her mother.
But Capulet only acts this way because Paris actually kind of almost like blackmails him into making him marry Juliet.
How does Paris blackmail him?
He blackmails him by kind of almost like criticizing him, saying like, you're letting your guard down, you're letting your daughter control the way you live, and you're not controlling her, and you should be letting her marry me instead of letting her make her own decisions.
I think that's a bit of an interpretation of the conversation. It's a very brief conversation, right? Does anyone remember what Capulet says that might suggest that maybe he was picking up on the vibe that Jack is kind of putting out there? Does anybody remember what Capulet says about Juliet? And this was a moment where we're kind of like, wow, change in this character. This is very different than what we saw in the beginning. Does anyone, can you remember that?
He would like punish her or like drag her somewhere by like the neck.
Right, that's when she refuses to marry, right? And she's so against it. Jack?
Actually, the line is in 3 scene 5, and it's line.
Just make sure you're speaking up.
It's on Act 3, Scene 5, line 155, or I will drag thee on a hurdle thither out, and green sickness carry on out the baggage.
Okay, I think Danny has another idea too.
Yeah, and kind of with like the parental thing that we were talking about before, that goes along with it perfectly. Like kind of like just like forcing your children is like what the parents want, like that not giving them like freedom and like independence.
And to go
But
off.
you guys said that was normal. So.
Yeah.
Well, another point is that a way that parents respond to their children, like their emotions when they're talking to them, can actually affect how the children actually feel. So when Capulet is saying, or whoever is saying, you have to marry Paris, it kind of changes her emotions and she's like, what? I don't want to do that. So that makes her even more in love with Romeo.
And at the same time, if Capulet was trying to make Juliet happy, he would have at least like asked her what would make you happy, or before he did anything, he would ask her and see it if it was okay.
But that's not the way families worked in that day, because the father was just this strong figure. He's the head of the household. He doesn't really talk to anyone. He doesn't even listen to his wife, so why would he listen to his daughter, who's supposed to just be submissive and listen to him all the time? So
Exactly. That shows how Capulet is, number one, impulsive, which affects how Juliet's impulsivity affects other characters in the story.
And it also like helps the fact that they're even more in love, like that Juliet really truly loves Romeo.
Brandon?
Because her parents are saying that like you have to marry Paris and she doesn't want to, instead of it being love, it could be just her like rebelling against her parents and doing what she thinks like could make them upset and just being like that rebellious teenager and just wanting to do something that her parents don't want her to do.
Because she is that loyal to Romeo. She does not want to disrespect Romeo because she loves him.
She'd rather disrespect her own family.
Yeah, she'd rather go against her own family's name than
remember,
not be loyal to Romeo.
Remember, she's 13. Going off of Raina, she's gonna rebel. Even though she may think she's being loyal to Romeo, she's really not. She's more just trying to go against her parents. She's 13. She's a young child still. She's still getting shaped by growing in her life.
Exactly, that's why she's going against her parents.
Yeah,
because she's loyal to Romeo and she does not want to marry Paris.
She's thinking she's loyal, but really she's not. She's not being loyal. She's just trying to rebel and
How
be
do you
against.
know that?
So just because I see a couple hands going up, and I want to make sure we do get new voices. So the idea that we're debating right now is whether or not Juliet is responding to her parents' insistence she marry Paris, and that's pushing her closer to Romeo, or whether her desire to be close to Romeo is evidence of her feelings of true love and her loyalty to Romeo. All right, I haven't heard from Charlotte. I want to get to Ryan. So let's go Charlotte and Ryan. Okay, new point. Ryan, is yours jumping off of this? Okay, so hang on to yours. Write it down if you need to. Go ahead,
Bring
Ryan.
up evidence day because they're using a document that happened 600, 500 years after the play happened. So how is that valid?
Are you referring to the validity of their research?
Yes.
And saying that doesn't apply
Yeah.
because the play itself was written so long ago? Okay, do you want to respond to that? I mean, it's the question of whether your research is valid. You know, let's think about some ways that we can address that. Amanda?
I mean, like, it's still the human brain. Like, it hasn't really alternated. Like, evolution does, like, a lot for, like, especially, like, our physical, like representation and stuff like that. But, like, as, like, our brain, like, it's still, like, basically the same. Like, it hasn't changed that much to the point that it would, like, completely change the way, like, how we, like, look at our parents and, like, the things that we observe, like, in our life. Like, it doesn't necessarily change that much, especially in like 200 years. Like, especially when you take in the amount of time like the world has like existed. Like 200 years is like, and like for like our like brain, especially like, we haven't necessarily evolved like that much, especially in this like section that we're talking about.
So the question is, did teens back then behave, feel, respond in the same ways we do today, right? I mean, if we say no, then any of our research is null and void. If we say yes, as Amanda's saying, then we can still use some of our research, right, Connor?
If the brain was the same, then I would like to bring up the idea of a cheater's high, which is a rush of dopamine when you do something that is considered taboo. So Juliet dating Romeo would create this euphoric feeling inside of her mind because she's doing something that she's never been allowed to do. It's her own decision. And since she's never been really allowed to make her own decisions, it's such a new thing that she wishes to experience constantly.
Go ahead, Danny.
So, kind of going off what you said, love has been around forever. Like, it's one of the things about humans that doesn't really change. Like, types of love change, and like different people date different people. But like, love has been around for so long, and there's so many like different ways of falling in love with people. And I think that you don't even need research to show that like love is love. Like, there's no. Even though there's a lot of science behind it, like it's not really changing that much over the course of 400 or 500 years.
Charlotte, did you want to bring up, I know you had a new point. Did you want to shift things a little bit?
I was going to go back to Amanda's point and how everyone was saying that Romeo turned into this caring and like happy guy after marrying Juliet, but he killed Tybalt when he was married to Juliet, so it shows like that Juliet didn't always bring out the best in him.
The reason that he killed Tybalt was because he told Mercutio, like, oh, let's not fight today. But Mercutio still went against it, and he still fought. And then he felt bad because Mercutio died when he said, don't fight. So
And
then he went after Tybalt.
Juliet knows that too, because she says, "But wherefore, and didst thou kill my cousin? That villain cousin would have killed my husband," meaning that Tybalt would have killed Romeo anyway, even if Romeo hadn't killed Tybalt.
So she's saying that she'd rather, in that she's basically saying that she'd rather have Tybalt die than Romeo
But
because
are
she
you
loves
gonna
Romeo.
rather somebody who you don't know die than your cousin who you don't know alive?
Not if you're married.
If you love him,
And if Romeo had truly loved Juliet, wouldn't he have rather just maimed Tybalt rather than end his life? Well, there wasn't. Give him
No,
an
because
injury.
Tybalt would have killed Romeo either way.
Give him an injury.
Yeah,
A
would've
lasting
killed
one
him,
that'll
you
create a
would've-
long enough scar.
You would have
to
come
let
back
him
and
live.
killed him.
Okay, so
come back and kill him at a point.
So we're using the death of Tybalt as evidence of either Romeo's feelings that his love for Juliet is not true, because to kill Tybalt would be to destroy any possibility of a future. But on the love side, we're saying that he did it out of self-defense in a sense. Okay, that if he didn't kill Tybalt, Tybalt would have killed him, and certainly ending his life would be ending the relationship anyway. Raina?
And to go off with Connor, if Romeo just injured Tybalt, then he wouldn't have been banished and he wouldn't have been separated from Juliet. So if he thought about oh, if I kill him, I'm either going to be killed or I am going to be banished, he could have just injured him instead.
But think about this. Romeo wasn't a fighter. Like before this, he probably was held to sword a couple times in his life. He's not like this strong, very outgoing guy. Like Tybalt just killed Mercutio. Mercutio, we would think, had more of a chance of killing Tybalt than Romeo. And so I think Romeo was just scared that he was going to get killed. So that's why he had to kill Tybalt.
Charlotte?
Well, when Mercutio and Tybalt started fighting, it was more like they were kind of joking around about it, and no one thought that Mercutio was actually going to die because they thought that they were just kind of messing around. But then Romeo had more of a reason to fight Tybalt, so the outcome was different.
All right, I'm going to give a 2-minute warning. All right, let's just try to come up with some final points. And then I know we have some statements that we want to make in conclusion. Those of you who have prepared closing arguments, you might want to think right now about some maybe new information that has been brought to our attention, whether it be research or any textual evidence. Really think about some of the points that you made that you felt were the strongest, so that you can kind of bring those in the end. All right. Does anyone want to speak on the points we were just covering before we have our closing statements? Do we have any other ideas we want to bring in? Any new ideas? Dana?
I remember when Romeo went to the party and he first saw Juliet, he says, "Did my heart love till now? For swear it signed, for I never seen beauty till now." And that's just showing that, oh wow, she's so beautiful. How could I ever love Rosamond? I don't even know this girl, but did I ever truly love before I saw this pretty girl?
Okay, well, we have research that shows that it takes a fifth of a second to fall in love. That's it.
But what kind of love can that be if you don't know the person? You can't just love them. That's loving based on physical attraction. That's infatuation.
Yeah, and that's psychology. You can't deny the facts of the human brain.
There was this website that said most people fall in love. Some people fall in love over time, but most people it happens suddenly. So that just proves that most people they fall in love at first sight, whether we realize it or not. Romeo and Juliet did realize it, but maybe let's say you're dating somebody or whatever, maybe you fell in love with them at first sight, but you didn't realize it. But Romeo and Juliet did realize it the second they met each other, they were meant to be.
And it's kind of hard for us to understand this whole concept of true love, because I speak for myself, and I don't think any of you, but I don't think any of us have really truly fallen in love with someone yet. And we don't know how you feel and your emotions and how it kind of controls you.
Then how can you, if you're saying that, then how can you argue for your side if you don't
Because
know?
of the research.
But Romeo and Juliet were around the same age group as us, so how would they know any
But
better
that was
than
back
us?
then. That was back then. But it was
Back
so
then.
back then.
Okay, hang on. I know we do have some ideas. I have Raina with her hand up though.
To be
To
fair,
go back to what Amanda was saying earlier, apparently the human brain hasn't changed that much than what it was before. So what you're saying that that you guys and us don't really know love, then that means that they don't know love either.
No, I'm just
well, to be
saying.
fair,
or anyone ever
Juliet is getting
experienced
forced
it.
into.
Kenny, you had a hand up.
Yeah, back then it was normal. Like they were allowed to get married at the age, 13, 14, 15. So back then they felt that was normal. That if they saw love at first sight, that it's possible to get married. And that also brings pressure from the parents to bring back up that point again, because Romeo, knowing that Paris is with Juliet, he can feel obligated to marry her in a shorter amount of time to steal her from him.
All right, hang on. I want to hear from Ryan. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, I lost it.
You lost your point. Okay, so I lost it. All right, we do have to wrap it up because we only have about 5 more minutes, so we need our closing statements ready.
Oh, not closing statements. I was just gonna go on.
Quickly, go.
You said that he was trying to steal her from Tybalt, but at the party he didn't even know she was a captain. Like he didn't know who she was. So how would he even know about Tybalt? So you can't even say.
Or you mean Paris?
Yeah,
Paris. Now I will just very quickly, I will say, Kenny is correct because according to the text, when the nurse speaks to Romeo about Juliet arranging the marriage, she does tell him in a very frenzied way, because you know the way the nurse is, she does tell him there's a man, Paris, who wants to marry Juliet. So at the time, they've already agreed to marry, but at the time of the kind of arranging of the marriage, Romeo does know it. So if that is a point that we want to kind of bring. All right, we do, quickly, yes, go.
Like if it was really like a bad idea to like marry Romeo, like when like she was talking to the nurse, like the nurse should have said like, this is really dumb, like you shouldn't do this, especially because she was older and had more experience and she was married. So like when you think about it, like she did talk to someone, like she had advice about it, and she still like went through with it. So kind of also touches on like the impulse part of it as well.
Okay, so to have, I do want Jack to speak because I haven't heard a lot from him today. So go ahead, Jack.
I just also want to point out that the nurse just wanted her to get married already. So she was kind of, I guess that she was kind of just like,
the person that she was supposed to be.
Okay, we do
Yeah.
we do have to start wrapping up. There is an element of that within the play where the nurse, certainly they want to talk about the topic of marriage, and they do kind of push a little bit more than maybe they need to. All right, we need our final statements, so we need a quick wrap up so that we can get done before the bell rings. All right, so which side are we starting on? All right, go ahead, my love side. Closing thoughts. Just summarizing.
So they had both killed themselves for one another, and until Tybalt died, Juliet was grateful that Romeo didn't. At the party, Romeo said that he was only gonna go for Rosalind, and then when he saw Juliet, it was love at first sight. They had the easy option to leave one another when Capulet said, "If you don't come to marry Paris, leave. I'm not gonna talk to you again." And then he had the easy option of starting a new life in Mantua, forget about Juliet, but since they loved each other, he went back for her.
Okay, over here on our lust side.
This pair shows not true, but lust at first sight. This can be explored by the numerous times Romeo and Juliet talked about each other's looks and about their personalities, the impulsive decisions by the both of them, and the lack of true care for each other, for each other's well-being. Now let me leave you with the question. Say that you found your significant other, but they're moving somewhere like far away. Would you kill yourself in that situation?
Well, hold on. Those are our closing statements. All right, we're going to wrap it up. We have lots of good points, and I'm definitely going to have a lot to think about.
I have to say, I'm going to promote every one of you guys to the honors class. That was awesome.
Great job.
Ms. Conklin, thanks for having us in. We are going to get caught by the bell. By the way, tomorrow we'll be live streaming both girls and boys basketball. Next week we got a hockey game coming up, and then we have a final exam of Shark Tank with Mrs. Marone. So you guys, great job. Thank you very much. See you next time. We hope you enjoyed this broadcast with Mrs. Conklin's English class. We are fortunate enough that Mrs. Conklin is one of our own graduates. It's always a good thing when the alumni comes back and continues to build new legacies with our students.